I raise a hallelujah. I raise a hallelujah. In the presence of my enemies. In the presence of my enemies. I raise a hallelujah. I raise a hallelujah. Louder than the unbelief. Louder than the unbelief. I raise a hallelujah. I raise a hallelujah. My weapon is a melody. My weapon is a melody. I raise a hallelujah. I raise a hallelujah. Heaven comes to fight for me. Heaven comes to fight for me. I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is alive. I raise a hallelujah. I raise a hallelujah. With everything inside of me. With everything inside of me. I raise a hallelujah. I raise a hallelujah. I will watch the darkness flee. I will watch the darkness flee. I raise a hallelujah. I raise a hallelujah. In the middle of the mystery. In the middle of the mystery. I raise a hallelujah. I raise a hallelujah. Fear you lost your hold on me. Fear you lost your hold on me. I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is alive. I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is alive. Sing a little louder. 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 In the presence of my enemies. Sing a little louder. Louder than the unbelief. Sing a little louder. My weapon is a melody. Sing a little louder. Heaven comes to fight for me. I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is alive. I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is alive. I raise a hallelujah.
All right, everyone. I hope you're doing great. It is supposed to be Sunday, May the 16th, I believe. Let's see, 13, 14. Yeah, I'm recording this early, and I've never done that before. So we'll see how that goes. But this is Wednesday when I'm recording this. So if something monumental or momentous happens between now and then, or this will seem dated and odd. But I'm excited to get to be with you and talk a little bit more about the Gospel of John. And this will be our second lesson in that series. And I put a screen up there for 3 or 4 minutes with some encouragement to read John 4:46 through verse 15 of chapter 5. And so that will be our main text for tonight. Anyway, I appreciate you letting me do it in this manner. We've just got a lot going on with a wedding and graduation parties and family in town, etc. It's a little bit crazy, and so I really appreciate it. But I'm ready to go, and hopefully you've gotten to read that and remember a little bit about what we've talked about. Let's refresh our memories just a little bit about John's purpose in writing. His purpose in writing was stated by him in John 20, 30, and 31. Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which aren't recorded in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. And so his purpose, John's purpose, is, clearly to record signs that will prompt belief that will lead to life. And so he states that at the end of his book, which reminds me, I should have said this at the very beginning, there are some discussion questions that I will post on Facebook. That was part of that opening announcement as well. So if you want to look at those, refer to those, print those out, whatever, when we get to that section of our message tonight or lesson tonight, then that will those will be helpful. So, but anyway, that's John's purpose, and here's a quick outline. The first 18 verses of chapter 1 is the prologue. Then there are two divisions, main divisions of this book. Those signs that he references, that goes through the end of chapter 12. There are 7 of them. And then the book of glory, which is a focus on his last week, the Passion, particularly, and some of the inside details that happened there. So that's called the book of glory. And I want to just let you know, here are the 7 signs. The first one we did last week, we talked about the prologue and the fact that God is coming to earth as a man. And the first sign then proceeds to be when Jesus turns water to wine at the wedding at Cana in Galilee, and that's in John 2, 1 through 11. And so just for references, we're going to skip over the section about Nicodemus, which is very well known. Chapter 3 includes Nicodemus and some more thoughts about John the Baptist. And then chapter 4, the Samaritan woman at the well, another section that you probably are familiar with. And so anyway, I know this may be a little unorthodox as far as the way to approach John, but we're going to focus on those 7 signs instead of these conversations. We very well could have focused on the conversations between Nicodemus and the woman at the well and some others instead of the signs, but we're just doing it this way for now. Excuse me. So we're going to skip over this section, these sections, Nicodemus, Samaritan woman at the well, and go to the second sign, which is the nobleman's son is healed. And that was one of the sections I wanted you to read. And then immediately after that, in the beginning of chapter 5, the third sign is the healing at the pool. So you have the water to wine, then you have the nobleman's son who is healed, and the healing at the pool. Those are the first 3 of how many signs? 7. That's right. And so let's read a little bit, and I want you, as we're reading, to think about maybe a way to focus on these all 3 of these signs: the water to wine, the healing of the nobleman's son, and then the healing of the paralytic at the pool. What do these signs show Jesus has the power to do or has power over? Okay, each one of them kind of illustrates something. And anyway, and there are various answers, but I want you to kind of see that as we focus about it and think about these as we look at these together. So let's go ahead and do some reading. Once more, he visited Cana in Galilee, talking about Jesus. That's where he had turned the water into wine, and this time there was a certain royal official whose son lay sick at Capernaum. When this man heard that Jesus had arrived in Galilee from Judea, he went to him and he begged him to come and heal his son, who was close to death. Unless you people see signs and wonders, Jesus told him, you'll never believe. Okay, remember John's theme about signs and belief? The royal official said, Sir, come down before my child dies. He's desperate. Go, Jesus replied, your son will live. And the man took Jesus at his word, and he departed. While he was still on the way, his servants met him with the news that his boy was living. When he inquired as to the time when his son got better, they said to him, yesterday, at 1 p.m, the fever left him. Then the father realized that this was the exact time at which Jesus said to him, your son will live. So he and his whole household believed. So there's that sequence of things where a sign is done. Remember, a miracle and a sign, same thing. It's just a different word in some ways that John is using because a sign points to something. This event, miraculous event, is pointing to Jesus. And it is to elicit belief. And that's what the man does, right? It says that he and his whole household believed. And John very explicitly says what next? This was the second sign Jesus performed after coming from Judea to Galilee. So, here we have this. Okay, there's the first sign. Here's the second sign. Again, let's be thinking at the end. We'll talk about what are these three signs indicative of. What power do they indicate that Jesus has? Power over something, power to do something, and recall the details of this story and where the man was, where the son was, where the healing took place, where was Jesus when that happened, etc. And let's see if we can weave that together. Let's go ahead and press on to the next story because I want it to be our focus tonight. And again, we're skipping such good material with Nicodemus and the woman at the well, and I just made it an editorial teaching choice, if you will, just because we didn't have time to cover everything in this format. But and I kind of wanted to focus on something different as we go through John this way. But so we come now to the third sign. This is in John chapter 5. And we see sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals, okay? Now, there is in Jerusalem, near the sheep gate, a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. Here a great number of disabled people used to lie, the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. One who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" "Sir," the invalid replied, "I've no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I'm trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." We'll come back to that in just a second. What's going on there? Then Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat, and walk." At once the man was cured. He picked up his mat and he walked. The day on which this took place was a Sabbath. It's interesting. If we stopped at that period right there, he picked up his mat and walked, period. Wow, yes. But it's almost like John says, dun, dun, dun. The day on which this took place was a Sabbath. And so the Jewish leaders said to the man who had been healed, "It's the Sabbath. The law forbids you to carry your mat. You can't carry that. It's against the Sabbath rules." But he replied, "The man who made me well said to me, 'Pick up your mat and walk.'" Kind of like he's saying, here's the deal. He told me to, so I'm going to do it. So they asked him, "Who is this fellow who told you to pick it up and walk?" The man who was healed had no idea who it was, for Jesus had slipped away into the crowd that was there. Remember, they were there for this festival. Well, later Jesus found him at the temple and said to him, "See, you're well again. Stop sinning or something worse may happen to you. I've always found that to be a very interesting verse. The man went away and told the Jewish leaders it was Jesus who had made him well. I believe that's the last verse of that section there. It was Jesus who made me well. That's who the fellow was that told me to pick up my mat. So here we have the third sign, the healing of the man. Now, a couple of things to point out, and maybe I should go back to a couple of the slides here and point a couple of things out. Let's see. I'm having a little bit of internet issue, but I think we've gotten, well, maybe not. Well, maybe so. Let's see. Let me look at something here while I'm, yeah, all right, hold on just a second, guys. Let me go back to this, and let's see if that wakes it up. My apologies. All right, I'll go back to camera, go back to this. Still nothing, huh? So too bad we're not doing a lesson. Up, there it was. I just wasn't patient enough. So here it is. I apologize for that. The invalid, by the way, don't you think that's an interesting word? Invalid, invalid. You're an invalid person because you are not well or not whole. But he points out that, when Jesus is saying, why are you, what's the deal? He says, I don't have anybody to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. And someone else gets in ahead of him. And, you may have a note in the bottom of your scripture there in your copy of the Word, and it may be included in some, but some of the minor manuscripts that they've found include this information that that people would go and wait for these waters to start bubbling up, and it was believed that an angel of the Lord would come down and dip its wings into the water and make it bubble, and if you were the first one in the pool, you were able to be healed. And so that's what he's referencing. That was the belief, and that's why all these people would hang out here at this pool that were sick. They were just waiting for healing. And you can imagine their plight, and you can imagine how many were gathered there, and so on and so forth. But he was like, I'm paralyzed. I can't get myself in there. And I've been waiting for 38 years, right? Isn't that what it says? A lifetime. And so that's kind of what's going on. There. Then we have a couple of other things. Jesus tells him to get up and walk. And then you have this problem about it being on the Sabbath, right? And so we have several things here. I don't really understand, honestly. I didn't do a lot of research into this before class. Didn't plan to spend much time on it, but apparently he was doing something later on when Jesus found him at the temple. And stop sinning or something worse may happen to you. That sounds kind of harsh. We don't know what he found the man doing. We don't know, if that was an indication of why he was originally in that condition. I don't know. But whatever it is, Jesus gives him a warning and tells him to stop. Okay, and so anyway. Here's some questions, because the two stories, and this is really more about the second story. Two stories are about healings, right? The nobleman's son, the father pleaded with Jesus to come. And then particularly this one, here's a guy that Jesus encounters at this pool. So what are some questions related to this? And again, you will hopefully have gotten to see these ahead of time. I think it will benefit you. But question, what do you think motivated Jesus to go to Bethesda during a time of celebration? That's a good question. Jesus at a festival, right? Feast of the Jews. There's several feasts of the Jews, Passover and among them. But Jesus is up there for a time of celebration, and he chooses to go alone, right, down to the pool of Bethesda, a known hangout for sick people. They're all there waiting on the water. So you would have had blind, right? It says the blind, the lame, the paralyzed, they would have all been just there. What a odd thing to do. What do you think motivated him to do that during this time? And I think the simple answer that I come up with is that's his mission, right? God was with those who hurt, and God is with those who hurt and are broken and in need of healing. And, it's easy for us to get going and happy in life and forget about some who are really struggling with illness, with mental illness, physical illness, depression, life consequences and struggles. And life's good for me, I'm fine. And here's Jesus intentionally going down there during this time. So, what's the next question? How would you describe the life of the invalid man in this story? So just use your imagination for a second. What's going on with this guy? He's been there 38 years. Where does he get his food? How does he go to the bathroom? Does he go right there? How close to the water was he? Had he been able to work his way close enough to where he's right there? Had people pushed him out of the way because he's paralyzed and he can't fight back? Is he? Has he been there longer than anybody else? Does anybody even acknowledge him? Is everybody so worried about? I mean, imagine this kind of. If you've ever been in a third world hospital or a leper colony or you've seen some of these things on TV, or you've just been in situations, where people's desperation is palpable, and their sorrow and their pain and agony and their hurt and their, this man had an awful life. And I love that Jesus said, "Do you want to get well?" I love that question. And it's interesting. Why do you think the religious leaders reacted to the man's healing in the way they did? And then kind of a side note to that, what's that reveal about their hearts and motives? Well, we see why they reacted the way they did. We see how, but why? Why did they react with such, if someone has cancer, incurable cancer that you know of, and they show that they've been sick, okay, and near death for a long time, and they show up this morning, it will be Sunday morning, and they say, "I'm well," and they are in good health. Their color is good. They're walking. They have strength and vitality, and you're like, "What happened?" And that would be your reaction, right? Thank goodness, thank God, our prayers are answered. You're well. But no. What if instead of that you said, "Well, you sure have missed a lot of church," or "Did you forget your Bible today?" Or, people have been calling you to find out why it is that you haven't been giving at church, your contribution. Are you going to make that up? I mean, seriously, it's that level of silliness, that even more so with these guys. Here he is carrying the mat that was his home. That may have been his only possession. I mean, I can imagine he was constantly robbed and stolen from because he couldn't fight back, right? The only thing he had was the mat he laid on, and Jesus healed him, and he was walking with this probably nasty old, yucky, disgusting mat. And they're saying, "Oh, you can't carry that. It's the Sabbath." Unbelievable. What does that show about their hearts and their motives? Well, they were more worried, what? About rule keeping and about their rules than about what God had done for this man. And they had totally lost the big picture. and started focusing on these minors instead of the majors, right? And again, I'm not saying it's not important to ask questions like that from time to time, but I am just saying that they had lost their bearings. I wonder how many of us sometimes lose our bearings on things as well. Does that? I mean, look at the story before this. A couple stories before this with the Samaritan woman at the well, just to reflect for a second. How many husbands you got? Go home and tell your husband. I don't have one. You're right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The one you've got isn't your husband anymore. He won't even commit to you. What if someone like that shows up at your church and, maybe they're just, life has just totally been awful for them. And we start questioning them. Or do you see what I'm saying? I mean, these individuals, these Jews, religious leaders, did not react in a way that was godly. And it revealed their real motives. It really did. All right, so let's kind of apply some of this to ourselves. What does this story reveal about why it's important for believers to minister to hurting people? We have begun over the last few months, because of the generosity of one of our members, to dream, right, about what we can do in our community and what we can do to make a difference in this world. And this question kind of plays into that somewhat. What does this story reveal about why it's important for believers to minister to hurting people? There's all kinds of answers, right? I think the obvious answer is, what did Jesus do? He's up there at a festival. I mean, he could have instead been, I'm going to the temple to worship God, and I'm sure he did. And I'm sure he offered sacrifices and all those things. But while he was up there, he didn't forget about the hurting, those whose lives were torn apart. And so, what a model we have for reaching out to those that experience addiction and marriage issues, divorce, those that are unwanted by others, those that are grieving, those that have cancer, those that have chronic illness and disease, those who are aging, those who are struggling with all kinds of life issues. The church is not perfect people. It's forgiven people. And we are to be about ministering to those that are suffering. And I love the example of Jesus going up to Jerusalem for this festival. Yet we find him sneaking off to this pool. That would have been a known place. I mean, if that man had been there 38 years waiting for this, it's been there at least that long. Everybody would have known this place as the place of people, it's their last hope, right? So how can we demonstrate God's love to people who are suffering? How can we become more sensitive to them? What are some ways that we can demonstrate this? Well, we can show care and compassion. And how do we, there's all kinds of ministries here at Kingwood already. And what are some things we haven't thought of? I learn about new things going on in Murfreesboro all the time. Different nonprofit organizations, different ministries at churches, different individuals that have a passion for something God's put on their heart. How can we, what's God calling you to do? What's he calling me to do specifically that fits my experiences and life and my giftings? And what do I need to do to minister to people? And doing so, how do I become more compassionate and empathetic towards others? Boy, that's a tough one. Here's Jesus. He could have said, man, I came to save the sinners and I came to save the sick, but I don't really enjoy going down there and hanging out with them while I'm walking through there and they're grabbing me and they're begging me and they're pulling at my robe and they're dirty and they smell bad and oh my goodness, it's crowded. People are moaning and groaning, and yet he did. And that process of developing empathy for others is not easy, unless I think we see ourselves as someone, whether we're physically wretched or certainly spiritually in need, and that Jesus walks in there among us as well. I think that's the start of it. So, last question for application purposes. What are some of the challenges of ministering to people with a serious illness? And then also kind of the corresponding question, what are the rewards? What are some of the challenges of ministering to people with a serious illness, and what are the rewards? Well, the challenges, I think, are it's exhausting. Sometimes it's yucky and gross. Sometimes it makes us uncomfortable. Sometimes it makes us realize our own mortality. Sometimes it can kind of drain us. Sometimes it can, we don't know what to do. We don't know what to say. We don't know, we feel guilty for feeling happy if someone else is really struggling. There are probably some other things, and feel free to, on any of this, I hope you'll comment in the chat, even though I'm not there to respond. I definitely will look at it afterwards. But it's hard work. It's draining. I mean, we do a lot in our, we acknowledge a lot in our culture about the toll that the healthcare and the first responders experience when they're caring for other people, especially during this pandemic time, and that's kind of been heightened. And so we're all kind of aware of what of being a caregiver. There's a price to be paid, but it's worth it. I believe there are rewards. I believe as children take care of their aging parents, they get to partially pay back the debt that was paid for them as they were growing up and as they were being clothed and fed and housed and taught and loved, and you get to be like Christ and to experience what it means to give unconditionally. Sometimes when you're taking care of somebody who cannot pay you back or do in turn return the favor, there's a special reward for that. In understanding, I think, more about what God's done. I think that's one reason why parenting helps teach us a lot about God and His patience for us. And I think it's similar when you're taking care of someone who has a serious illness, even as difficult as it is. You're being unconditionally loving for someone, towards someone, and it's an amazing thing to be able to say, not in a prideful way, but to say, I understand more now what Jesus has done for us and done for me. So those are some of the rewards I can think of. I bet you can think of some more, and as well as some of the challenges, no doubt. So I believe I answered, I should say we answered these questions now. And these are questions just to cause you to think and cause us to contemplate what are some things that the story, how it could be applied. So I told you at the very beginning I wanted us to think about, as our last thought here, what are some of the ways these signs show the power that Jesus has. And we'll do these with the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th sign as well. But I want us to look at these. The 7 signs, Jesus has power over. What do you think about the water to wine? Well, you could say nature for sure, I think. Changing the natural quality of one substance to another. But the water to wine at the Cana wedding, I believe, shows Jesus has power over quality. Remember the statement that the master of the banquet said? This is the best. This is the best. Why did you do it this way? Jesus has power over quality, right? He is the master of that. What about the nobleman's son? Well, the distance, was a factor. Do you recall that Jesus wasn't actually in the presence of the son, physical presence of the nobleman's son when he was healed. It was from a distance. He said, "Go, your son will live," right? Well, it wasn't near him. So it shows that Jesus has power over distance, right? And we know there's some other, I believe it was Jairus' daughter, maybe. Um, there are several situations where Jesus shows this ability, right? So the ability to have power over quality, power over distance. What about the last one? Let's see. What about the healing at the pool? Well, the man had been there 38 years. Okay? It would be very easy for him to think nothing's going to change. It's impossible. I've been here this long and, it's unchangeable. Well, Jesus healed him after 38 years of paralysis, right? So he has power over time. It doesn't matter the distance, the time. Jesus has power over that. So I believe John is showing us those things. And there are a few more that we'll obviously get to as we look through these next signs. I believe the next sign that we'll talk about is the bread, the feeding of the multitude, and then we will see him walk on water. So you might want to find those sections and be reading them if you're not doing the daily Bible readings or reading along in John. But anyway, it's been great to be with you, I guess, sort of with you. I don't have the same power that Jesus does in that way over distance and time, but I can record something a few days early and leave it for you. And again, I apologize for having to do it this way. I prefer face to face, in person, together. Second best would be live online, and then third best, obviously, I think would be this. But I'm still glad to do that. And let me pray us out, and we'll just ask God to bless our evening. Father, thank you for this day, this time that you've given us together. We thank you for the power of Jesus to heal, regardless of distance, regardless of time. Let that be a comfort to us. Let his example be a reminder to us to walk among those who are struggling and to offer healing and encouragement where we can, to be empathetic and not to major in the minors. And Father, again, we thank you for your Son, Jesus, who we follow, and it's through him we pray. Amen. All right, guys, blessings on you, and I hope you have a great evening. We will talk to you soon. Bye.